Toby, I'm Carol Callender, and I live on Q Road.
Which road?
Q.
You?
And this question is about collaboration. There are limits to what city government can do by itself.
Thank you.
Isn't there? Cleveland Heights has a wonderful history of community groups identifying problems and initiating projects to address them. Please talk about your views of collaboration and any additional ways you would like to see the city work with all segments of our community, from individuals to neighborhood groups to nonprofits and businesses to strengthen our city.
Individuals, neighborhood groups,
Nonprofits and businesses.
nonprofits, and business.
Mhm.
Well, I'm really big on collaboration. My profession, I am an economic development finance professional. I run a national nonprofit. We go around the country. We teach state and local governments. I mean, I literally teach probably 75% of my time. We teach them how to be more efficient with the way they finance economic development, with the way they spend their precious public resources. Collaboration ends up being a huge theme of that. And I'll take it from from the economic standpoint, but then I'll come down to a more sort of local level. On an economic standpoint, and I wrote a book, I don't know where it is, I brought it with me, but I wrote a book on economic development finance this past year. There are probably 70 different economic development finance programs that the city of Cleveland Heights could have in place. They probably would have to run 4 of them. The other, what did I say, 70? The other 66 would be working with other groups, working with housing groups, working with community development corporations, working with chambers of commerce, working with port authorities, working with all sorts of other groups to bring their resources to bear. And those are collaborations that you have to set up. Joint economic development districts, economic development corporations, different types of authorities that have the ability to work and collaborate. So that's one way to look at collaboration. One of the things I propose and I think would be really viable in Cleveland Heights is, why not an East Side Economic Development Corporation composed of 5, 6 East Side communities, or however many want to be in it, where instead of us all hiring an economic development director at $60,000, $70,000 a year, we have one economic development director and 4 or 5 deputies or subs who can work the community, can put projects together. And when we find a project that maybe can't fit in Cleveland Heights, but it can fit in South Euclid, we give it to South Euclid. We say, all right, it's going to be your deal. Let's split taxes. Let's figure out how to have some residual benefit from this. That's collaboration, and that is so easy to do. I've spoken to the mayor of South Euclid. She is a wonderful mayor. I think she's very strong, and I think she would do that in a heartbeat. She's tried to collaborate with different groups, and it's been hard. But you've got to be the one that says we want to do that. And I know some of my opponents are in favor of that, and I know some of them have been talked about a little bit. But talk is only so good. It's time for us to actually go out and make those relationships. On a more nonprofit basis, I see a lot of opportunity. I already mentioned the HRRC potential for collaboration. I already mentioned Future Heights and Heights Observer and the potential for publishing information on behalf of the city and getting information out there. You've got the Heights Community Congress, which the city does collaborate with on issues relating to home ownership and home buying and realtor behavior and whatnot. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for that. The Heights Arts obviously has a very good relationship with the city, with Kane Park and the Arts Festival and everything like that. I mean, everything's tenuous, but at times, but that's a good relationship. So I think we do locally with the nonprofits. I actually think we do a pretty good job of collaborating. It can always be stronger, and it did take the city a couple years to come around to the fact that the Heights Observer existed, and that it was a powerful tool in our community. But they get it now, so it's sort of like pushing the tortoise along occasionally, and we get them there. In terms of the neighborhood groups, I talked to an old timer here in Cleveland Heights. I mean, this guy maybe had to be close to 100 years old. I'm serious. And he lives on my street. Hilarious man. And we're trying to start a neighborhood association for Corrigan, Coleridge, and Scarborough, our 3 streets. So I had an event on my back porch 2 Sundays ago. I invited every single house, 430 homes, into my back porch. Thank God they didn't all come. And we said, what are we going to do about a neighborhood association? And this old timer says, we used to have one years and years and years ago. It was probably like 50 years ago, for all I know. And so we started talking about that. And what happened to the neighborhood associations? What happened to the neighborhood groups? There are some that are very strong, and then there are others that have just fallen away. And I know the city used to be really dedicated to these. They really used to care a lot about them. And we've lost some of that dedication. And we need to go back. We need to make it bring them back. We're going to have to go out and we're going to have to mobilize streets, and we're going to have to say a neighborhood association, a neighborhood group is another, again, I look at it as economics, another good economic opportunity. If you're my neighbor and you're looking out for me because you're part of my association, I'm also looking out for you. We've just strengthened our position. We strengthened our home value, because when you sell a house on that street, you can say, neighborhood association, these people all look out for each other. You don't have theft here. You don't have crime here. Somebody can't mow their lawn because they're disabled or they're elderly. Well, guess what? The city, the block chips in. Toby does it on the first Tuesday of June, and somebody else does it the third Tuesday of June. And those are the things we've got to bring back. And if there's a community that's going to do it, it's Cleveland Heights. I really believe that. I don't think it's going to happen anywhere else. That we're the kind of community that people kind of enjoy that interaction, And then on an individual level, I think we collaborated about 7-8 years ago on this vision. I think we collaborated very well, and there's probably people in this room that were part of that group. But the only thing I've heard come out of that is how frustrated people are by all the hard work they put into that group, only to have nothing come out of it 7 years later. I've heard a lot of people say it was a huge waste of their time because there was no implementation. They got to bring, government's about trust. I don't want to be all Barack Obama on everybody, but, he believes in trust. That's what's important. If you can't trust your government in Northeast Ohio, you really can't trust your government right now. We got to bring them some trust back. And it starts by the individuals, the neighborhood groups, the nonprofits, being open, being more transparent. And I think we can do that, even with the businesses, too, down the road.
All right, let me ask you this question that has to do with social or community inclusion. We are a community that's proud of its diversity and our tradition of inclusion. How do you see these issues, and where can we improve?
I see them coming to a little bit of a head right now. I've only been here for 4 years, so you have to sort of give me a little bit of break on all the history on this. But I was on the HCC board for a while. I'm on the Future Heights board. I'm also on the CAC, which is the group that makes recommendations to council on how to use CDBG funds. And I've started to see a lot of this social inclusion issue from many different perspectives. One, we are diverse. We are both socially and economically diverse, but we do have a difficulty talking about it in this community. It is a little bit of an uncomfortable third rail that people aren't crazy about getting into. When you have increases in crime and vacancies and foreclosures and Section 8 housings and whatnot, usually comes with an element that is problematic for that street or that part of the neighborhood. People like to complain about them at cocktail parties and community events, but they don't really want to have a community neighborhood group to talk about them. So it's a little difficult. So I think we've got to push some of our nonprofits, maybe HCC, maybe Future Heights, maybe other groups, to start to have these conversations, to start to sort of get real on it, because if you can't talk about them, you're not going to make an improvement on those issues. And HCC does these diversity intentional conversations, I think they call them. I've been to 3 or 4 of them. They're great. I mean, you sit in a room with people that are entirely different than you, socially, economically, race, heritage, ethnicity, everything, and you come to these conclusions about how they really are a lot like you, and you get an opportunity to meet people that you never would have met before. And so we're good at sort of promoting the idea, but now we sort of have to deliver on it. With the resources that we're facing, I know that a lot of cuts have been made at communities, community services, as well as the community center. So I think that has probably isolated people a little bit more, but that probably happens in a recession everywhere. Every place is a little isolated right now. But as we come out of it, and as a city like Cleveland Heights sort of flowers and tries to become a little stronger, we have an opportunity to pull people back together and say, hey, we got through it. We got through it together. The low income got through it, and the rich folks got through it, and guess what? We're a little better off for it now. I'm not an expert on that, but I think it just starts with conversations and starts with being a little more intentional and inclusive.